and I are journeying with her breast cancer. This last 2 years has been, as it were, one thing after another. This was precisely the situation that David faced not long after he defeated Goliath. To begin with, David was the toast of Israel, and everything he did was successful. And everyone, including Saul and his trusted commanders, admired him. And God had given to David a very special friend in Jonathan. But then it all went south. And David entered a period of his life that would last more than a decade, where he would be relentlessly pursued by Saul, and at times he was only a hair's breadth from death. He had to cope with the reality that although he had done nothing wrong, his love for God was undiminished, his motives in serving Saul were completely pure, and his conduct among the people was exemplary. But he became a fugitive to be hunted down like a stray dog. The spiritual lessons, or the spiritual lesson rather, that God was going to teach David through these years was to learn to lean on him no matter what. What David went through was all part of his training to be a king. And to be a king who would most resemble the great King Jesus, who would ultimately come from his loins. The truth is, whether we like it or not, God's plan for us is to grow in grace, to not trust in ourselves, to not trust in people, nor to trust in this world ultimately, but to trust in him so that we might really know him and enter in to the joy and the wonder and the glory of loving and obeying him. When God took us into relationship with himself, he was deadly serious about it. And wants you and I to know all that we can become because of that relationship with him. In short, as in the life of David, so in our lives, the Holy Spirit is about the business of teaching us to lean, to put our whole weight, to put our whole hope in the work of the Spirit. That is what David is about to learn, that the eternal God is our refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms. And he wants us to learn the truth of Isaiah 41. Don't panic. I am with you. There's no need to fear, for I am your God. I'll give you strength. I'll help you. I'll hold you steady. Keep a firm grip on you. It is vital that we learn this lesson, because whatever else we ultimately put our trust in this world will at best only offer something of temporary relief and a happiness that will pass away with a change of circumstances. So let's look at what happened to David. From chapters 18 right through to 21, it's the story of one loss after another. First of all, he lost his position. This happened because of a song that the women sang. Saul has slain his thousands, but David his 10,000s. And the green-eyed monster of jealousy and envy entered into Saul big time, in spite of the fact that David, though the anointed king, having been anointed to be king, was Saul's most trusted, loyal servant. David had no agenda in Saul's court to undermine him. He did Saul's bidding and enjoyed even the respect and the admiration of Saul's most trusted commanders. But then something snapped in Saul. Devoid of God's spirit and favour, Saul's life revolved around protecting his kingship and ultimately his dynasty. We read in 1 Samuel 18 and verse 10 and 11, the next day an ugly mood was sent by God to afflict Saul. He became quite beside himself, raving. David played his harp as usual, as he usually did at such times. Saul had a spear in his hand. Suddenly Saul threw the spear, thinking, I'll nail David to the wall. David ducked and the spear missed. This happened once. I mean, we read that and we think, yeah, well, that's bad. But actually, it was akin to someone threatening your life if you don't hand over your wallet. Or someone breaking into your house with a gun and demanding the keys of your car and stealing your jewellery. And as that poor woman we heard of just a week ago, who had a knife pressed against her chest. Saul hurled a spear at David that could have killed him. If our life is threatened on the street or in our home, we never forget it. In fact, some people are so traumatised that they never get over it. That's what David was experiencing. Then add to that the hurt David must have felt. He had served Saul faithfully, and without warning a spear is hurled at him by the man who he had come to love and trust. And in that moment he realises that Saul is a madman. David's life and his perception of people changed. Reality has struck. But though aware of this situation, David still continued to faithfully serve Saul. We read in 1 Samuel 18 and verse 15 and 16. As Saul saw David becoming more successful, he himself grew more fearful. He could see the handwriting on the wall. But everyone else in Israel and Judah loved David. They loved watching him in action. In spite of Saul's now obvious hatred, at the moment, David's position still seems secure. How can you expel someone who was so successful and is being blessed by God? And so David stayed in the army and did his job with great talent. But with each success, Saul's envy and hatred grows. And again, I want to emphasise that David has done nothing wrong. But Saul's conspiracy against David continues. One day Saul said to David, "Here is Merab, my eldest daughter. I want to give her to you as your wife. Be brave and bold for my sake. Fight God's battles." But all the time Saul was thinking, the Philistines will kill him for me. I won't have to lift a hand against him. But that plot didn't work. And then he heard that Michal, his other daughter, loved David. And he promised to her at a price of 100 lives of the Philistines, which David delivered in double. Again, Saul had no luck. Nothing is working for Saul. And he kind of reminds me of Coyote trying to kill the Roadrunner in that famous cartoon series. Everything the coyote does blows up in his face. And that was exactly what was happening to Saul. But then it got worse. In 1 Samuel 19:1 we read, Saul told his son Jonathan and all the attendants to kill David. But Jonathan was very fond of David and warned him, my father Saul is looking for a chance to kill you. Be on your guard tomorrow morning, go into hiding and stay there. Again, let us remember, David is an officer in Saul's army, the brightest young talent in Israel. And now David knows that without a shadow of a doubt, his position is precarious. Because now it's not only Saul who wants to kill him, but he's also given his permission to any of his men to kill David as well. So the situation is, it's not just the boss who's against him, it's the whole office. But David continues to do what is right and serve Saul faithfully. And then we read in 1 Samuel 19:9, again, David was playing the harp. Saul tried to pin him to the wall with his spear, but David eluded him as Saul drove the spear into the wall. That night, David made his escape. His life with Saul is finished. His security, his status has gone. He's now a fugitive on the run. That's the first thing he lost, was his position and his security. The second thing he lost was his wife. He ran from Saul and he ran home, and Saul had his men watching David's house, and Michal warned him that if he didn't escape tonight, that he would be dead in the morning. And she enabled him to escape, and then she put an idol. I find that interesting. She put an idol in the bed to replicate David, so that when the men came, she said, oh, David is sick. And then Saul demanded, bring him anyway. And of course, when they brought the bed, they discovered the idol. And Saul said to Michal, why did you deceive me like this and send my enemy, note that, my enemy away so that he escaped? Michal told him, he said to me, let me get away, why should I kill you? David has lost his wife. That pristine faith developed on the pastures around Bethlehem is being tested by the realities of being a public figure and one who is not in favour in front of the king. A little while ago, David was the toast of the nation, a hero, a commander in the army, married to the king's daughter. Now he is a fugitive with only a few friends, and they too will be taken from him. Thirdly, he lost his mentor. David is running through the hills, trying to find some secure place to hide, trying to find someone to support him. And as you would expect, he runs to Samuel, who had anointed him to be king to succeed Saul. And when he met Samuel, he told him everything that Saul had done to him. Then the text tells us, then he and Samuel withdrew to the privacy of Naioth. Now it's interesting, Naioth was the perfect place to hide, because archaeologists have discovered about the houses there that they were built back to back, side to side, top to bottom, in a maze-like arrangement. It would not be very easy to find David or Samuel in that situation. But of course, unfortunately, Saul's spies are always everywhere. And they informed him that David is in Naioth with Samuel. And so again, David is on the run. He has lost Samuel, his mentor. See, what's happening is, gradually all of David's support is evaporating. And at the same time, his emotional stability and confidence is beginning to fall apart. He's lost position, his wife, now his mentor. And then fourthly, he loses his closest friend. He runs to Jonathan, his last hope. Jonathan, the one who loved David as he loved his own soul. And he pleads with Jonathan, "Why is your father trying to kill me? What have I done wrong? What sin have I committed? Why is he doing this, Jonathan?" Jonathan says, "This cannot be, my friend. You're not going to die. My father does nothing great or small without telling me. So why would he hide something like this from me?" And then David replies, and you can feel the anguish and the bewilderment and the fear in his words. He says in 1 Samuel verse 3, "I swear to you by the living God that I am only one step from death." He's in a difficult situation. Jonathan then assured David of his love and loyalty, and they arranged a signal that if David's life was in jeopardy, which it was, that would be the warning for him to flee. And that's exactly what happened, with the little boy firing arrows and what Jonathan said, which was the signal that David's life was in danger, and David ran. David had lost his closest friend. And of course then, there was no emails, no Facebook, no Twitter, no Skype to keep in touch. Jonathan was gone from his life, and their friendship would be just a beautiful memory. Position gone, wife gone, mentor gone, closest friend. And he also lost his self-respect. If all the losses he has sustained up until now were not enough, then David now totally falls apart. The loss of Samuel and Jonathan, I think, were really the last straw, and they completely knocked the stuffing out of David, because he realises now for the first time that he is completely alone. There is no one upon whom he could rely to help him. And even if he did find someone to support him, he would put their lives in danger. So what did he do? 1 Samuel 20 verse 10 tells us, "So David left, fleeing from Saul, and went to King Achish of Gath." What? Gath? The home of Goliath? the Canberra of the Philistine nation. I mean, they all knew who he was. How could they not know? It would be like Jennifer Hawkins in a convent, for goodness sake. 1 Samuel 20 and verse 11 says, the king's officials said to Achish, isn't this David of his country, the king of his country? This is the man about whom the women sang as they danced. Saul has killed thousands, but David has killed his 10,000s. And then I cannot believe what David did next. We just let the text speak. 1 Samuel 20. Their words made a deep impression on David, and he became very much afraid of King Achish. So whenever David was around them, he pretended to be insane and acted like a madman when they tried to restrain him. He would scribble on the city gates and let his spit drool down his beard. David is at the bottom of the barrel. What a tragedy. It makes you want to weep to see this good and godly young man reduced to behaving like a madman, grovelling around on the ground, unable to be restrained, and then his saliva drooling down his beard. He is so desperate to find a place where at last he could be safe. When he's presented to the Philistine king Achish and is behaving like a madman, the king says, the Bible's full of humour, the king says, take him away. I've got enough idiots in my court without another one. All the supports of David's life, all those things that gave him security and stability, are all gone. His position, his wife, his mentor, his closest friend, and now even his self-respect. The interesting thing is this. After David's first escape, helped by Michal, we do not have a psalm or a prayer from him while he's on the run. Only fear and despair. You see, everything David believed about God and his faithfulness has been hit by a tsunami of loss. The position and all the people that gave him security in this world are gone. From where he sat, it looked as if his life and future were in ruins. And what was he to make of the anointing of Samuel all those years before? But you know, when you're a true child of God, you're never beaten. You're never beaten. And David learned through these trials, through all these losses, he learned to lean on God. And we see this because when he got to the cave of Adullam, which we'll be looking at next week, he writes this psalm. This is the first psalm from this period, but it comes after his escape finally from the Philistines. And he says in Psalm 57 and verses 1 to 3, and I think it's great in the Message Bible, "Be good to me, God, and now. I've run to you for dear life. I'm hiding out under your wings until the hurricane blows over. I call out to high God, the God who holds me together. He sends orders from heaven and saves me. He humiliates those who kick me around. God delivers generous love. He makes good on his word." That's our man. He's back. He's not beaten. And he's come back stronger and wiser and more determined than ever to claim his destiny. Someone has well written, "Sometimes when things are falling apart, they may actually be falling into place." And that's what was happening to David, even though he didn't realise it at the time. So then what does it mean to lean on God? To put all your weight, all your hope upon him, and to leave your life totally in his hands. I came across a lovely piece by Johnny Erickson Tada, a wonderful Christian woman. She writes this: "Honesty is always the best policy, but especially when you're surrounded by a crowd of women in a restroom during a break at a Christian women's conference." I've never had that experience, so I'll just take her word for it. One woman putting on lipstick said, "Oh, Johnny, you always look so together, so happy in your wheelchair. I wish I had your joy." Several women nodded around her. And then she said, "How do you do it?" as she capped her lipstick gag. "I don't do it," I said. "In fact, may I tell you honestly how I woke up this morning? This is an average day. I breathe deeply." This is Johnny speaking. "After my husband Ken leaves for work at 6 a.m, I'm alone until I hear the front door at 7 a.m. open. That's when my friend arrives to get me up. While I listen to her make coffee, I pray, 'Oh Lord, my friend will soon give me a bath, get me dressed, sit me up in my chair, brush my hair and teeth, and send me out the door. I don't have the strength to face this routine one more time. I have no resources. I don't have a smile to take into the day. But you do. May I have yours, God? I need you desperately.'" So this woman says, "Well, what happens when your friend comes through the bedroom door?" I turn my head toward her and give her a smile sent straight from heaven. It's not mine, it's God's. And so, she said, gesturing to my paralysed legs, "Whatever joy you see today was hard won this morning. I have learned that the weaker we are, the more we need to lean on God. And the more we lean on God, the stronger we discover him to be. The stronger we discover him to be." I guess the challenge for us this morning is simply this: who or what are we leaning on for our security, for our hope? The writer of the Hebrews wrote this: "We do not have a high priest who cannot be touched with the feelings of our infirmities, but was in all points tempted as we are. Let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace, that we might find mercy and grace to help in time of need." And just something for us who are men here, fathers and grandfathers. What a wonderful legacy to leave behind as men, being examples of what it means to lean on God. That's a legacy that will last for eternity, and God will be glorified in our family. Let's pray. I'm sorry I can't pray. I just asked Jan to come and close the service.
Wow. What a challenge. Thank you for what you've prepared for us today, John.